Hello and welcome to another Cliff Reviews Art House. This time I'm reviewing the film Green Border, directed by Agnieszka Holland. Wow, this film is really something special. It's very emotional, it's very disturbing, it's a harrowing experience. It's based on real events that occurred at the Polish-Belarusian border. The film is set in various chapters, each focusing on a number of different characters. We've got a Syrian refugee family, an Afghan English teacher, a Polish border guard, and a group of Polish activists that are helping the refugees. This is a really important film, and I think everyone should see it. It's like a documentary. It's a fictional recreation of real events. Everything was based on research and documentation. Everything in it apparently really happened. But the fictional element gives a freedom to go way beyond a straightforward documentary. Also, this film is a fantastic thriller. It's gripping and it's dramatic. These migrants are used as political pawns. They're demonized, they're dehumanized. And although it's specifically about Poland, it has universal significance these days. There's a really interesting contrast with Poland's response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. At the end of the film, some information is given that during the first weeks of the war in Ukraine, Poland welcomed close to 2 million Ukrainian refugees. Yet since the beginning of the refugee crisis in 2014, about 30,000 people have perished crossing various European borders. These are really stark figures, and the film presents this in an excellent way. Now, I'm often critical of artworks making an important political point in a way that's too imaginative and obvious. Heavy-handed political points can ruin a work of art for me. However, somehow this film successfully does it. It's all really on the nose. It's very obvious. There's no subtlety in this. It doesn't hold back in any way, but it doesn't feel heavy-handed or unimaginative. It doesn't feel like there's a subtle way of making this film. I think one reason why this works is the film is beautifully made. It has a real poetry to it. It has a visual power way beyond just documentary. The obvious political point is really important and really well made, but it's presented within a stunning work of art. It's also a great thriller, a great drama, but never melodramatic. Oh, it's really, really well made in my view. It's shot in black and white, and in an interview with the DOP, he said that they just couldn't shoot this topic in colour, and that kind of makes sense to me. It really strips back the poetry to something really basic. It made me think of Adorno when he said to write a poem after Auschwitz is barbaric. And there's an interesting contrast here with Io Capitano, which I recently reviewed, which was about migrants coming from Africa. That is shot in beautiful colour with incredible cinematography. And I criticised that film a little bit for glossing over the complexity of the distinction of economic migrants versus refugees. Now, I don't interpret Adorno's comment that poetry isn't possible after Auschwitz. What this means to me is that we can't make art absent of the terrible things that have happened and continue to happen in the world. Green Border definitely does not do this. It is poetic, but it's clearly not glossing over any trauma. There is an interesting contrast here with Io Capitana. In Green Border, we're clearly talking here about refugees fleeing torture, persecution and trauma. I think this makes it a much more sophisticated film. The black and white is very evocative. It looks like documentary footage. It evokes the Second World War. We're horrified by this. And the film challenges us to question why somehow our politicians are able to view the migrant issue in a different way. The whole film is virtually set in the woods, in nature. And one intriguing thing about this is that the various characters have different encounters with animals, with a wolf, with birds, with a moose. These are powerful moments, and I wasn't really sure why they were in the film. One possible idea that I had is that the animals are kind of neutral between the migrants and the poles in the film, and there is a sense in which nature is so much bigger than humans, like somehow the animals are watching what's happening. I'm not sure about this, but I really liked this feature in the film. Another thing I liked was that where we had the scenes at the end with the Ukrainian refugees, this initially feels very shocking to see the Ukrainian refugees so well treated. The contrasts are very obvious. We see a family that looks very similar to the Syrian family that we've seen in the main story. And for a moment, the Ukrainians seem kind of incredibly privileged compared to what we've witnessed for the black and brown migrants. I really like how Holland handles this. I think she almost encourages us to have this feeling. But then we're reminded that the Ukrainian refugees are also fleeing trauma. She does this by showing us that the same activists are helping the Ukrainian refugees, that to them, a migrant in need is a migrant in need, regardless of where they're from or the colour of their skin. Holland received a lot of criticism from the highest level of Polish government. She was accused of being anti-Polish, of Nazi propaganda. And I find this unbelievable. This highlights the role of Western governments in making this migrant problem so much worse than it needs to be. Overall, I rate this film very, very highly. It's a harrowing watch. It's very difficult and uncomfortable. There's a relentless depiction of suffering and cruelty. However, there is hope in this film. The activists and the border guards that question what they're doing. I like this. There's some beautiful human connections between the activists and the migrants. Although there was one scene that I didn't feel quite worked. It was the scene where a group of Polish and migrant young people rap together. This was the one scene that felt a bit heavy-handed and a bit obvious. But you know what? I still enjoyed it. All relief from the trauma was welcome in this film. I think this film is absolutely unmissable. It's important, it's thrilling, and it's incredible artwork. I highly, highly recommend this film. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.